Hi everyone, welcome to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast, your daily audio summary of the latest news reported in the Ukrainian media. My name is Artem and here is the news. For 508 days, Ukraine defends itself against the forces of the Russian invasion. Head of Russian occupational administration in Crimea, Serhiy Aksyonov, said that an extraordinary event had occurred on the Crimean bridge that connects the peninsula with Russia, reports Ukrainska Pravda. He informed that traffic on the bridge was stopped. According to the Russian Telegram channels, part of the bridge fell down. At least 2 people were killed and 1 more was injured. Local residents confirmed the fall of the span of the Crimean bridge. They say that there were at least 2 explosions. Russian authorities asked not to travel via the bridge but choose an alternative way via the occupied south of Ukraine. US presidential candidate and former President Donald Trump explained how he wants to force the presidents of Ukraine and Russia to conclude a peace agreement if he wins the election, reports Glavcom. In an interview with Fox News, Trump said that he knows both Zelensky and Putin well. I would tell Zelensky, no more, you got to make a deal. I would tell Putin, if you don't make a deal, we are going to give him a lot. We are going to give Ukraine more than they ever got if we have to. I will have the deal done in one day, said Trump. Earlier, on several occasions, Trump promised to end the war in 24 hours, while Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky recalled that Trump had not done so before the full-scale invasion. Zelensky said US President Joe Biden could end the war in Ukraine in 5 minutes if it were a question of surrendering Ukrainian territories, but the country would not agree to this. We would really appreciate if you could rate us, ideally with 5 stars, in the apps where you are listening to this podcast: Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and others. This really helps more people to find out about the highlights from Ukraine and truth about Russia's invasion. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar said that the situation on the Eastern Front has escalated, reports Army-Inform. According to her, for 2 days in a row, the Russian forces have been actively advancing on the Kupiansk Front in Kharkiv Oblast. The Ukrainian troops are on the defensive. There are fierce battles going on, and the positions of the parties are changing dynamically several times a day. At the same time, Ukrainians are gradually moving forward on the Bakhmut Front. There is a daily advance on the southern flank, while on the northern flank the enemy is attacking. Maliar has added that on the Avdiivka and Marinka fronts, the Russians continue to carry out offensive operations, but the front line is not moving. Spokesperson for the Tavria Front Defense Forces of Ukraine that operates in the south, Valery Shershin, said that Ukraine's forces have advanced by more than 1 kilometer on the Berdyansk front, reports Radio Liberty. The situation in the Melitopol front remains unchanged. Heavy battles and maneuvers continue. Strike units are consolidating their positions, conducting aerial reconnaissance, clearing mines, inflicting fire on the enemy, and carrying out counter-battery measures. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan informed that the U.S. is running out of ammunition in its own arsenals amid the provision of military aid to Ukraine, reports NVUA. In an interview with CNN, he said that the Biden administration, after taking office, discovered that the stocks of 155mm munitions, which is standard for NATO, was relatively low. Sullivan said that the administration also realized that it would take years, not months, to replenish supplies to an acceptable level. President Biden ordered the Pentagon to work rapidly to scale up the ability of the United States to produce all the ammunition it could ever need for any conflict at any time. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that failure to extend the grain initiative, which expires on 17th of July, will cost Russia huge diplomatic expenses, reports European Pravda. In an interview with CBS, Sullivan noted that in recent months, Putin has repeatedly changed his mind about the grain agreement. He said that if Russia decides to pull out of the agreement, the rest of the world will take a look at that and say that Russia has turned its back on ensuring that the countries of Africa, Latin America, and Asia can get the food they need at affordable prices. He believes that this will come at an enormous diplomatic cost to Russia. Sullivan added that Putin will have to make a choice, and the US is ready for any scenario and is working closely with Ukraine on this issue. Thank you for listening to the Highlights from Ukraine podcast. We are a commercial initiative of just two people and we need your help to grow. Share information about the podcast, rate us in the app, subscribe to our Patreon. With your support, we are getting better. We call on you to demand from governments of your countries to impose the toughest sanctions possible on Russia and its citizens to stop their invasion of Ukraine.